but to get started, we're just gonna get some background on our speakers today. So Ken, Sandro, I don't know who'd like to go first, but we'll look forward to hearing your story.
Well, Ken pointed at me, so I guess I'll go first. Hey everyone, good to see everyone. And Adrian, thanks for putting this together. Like obviously, it's just so awesome to see the Naturally New York chapter just continue to grow and thrive, and it's just super cool what what you and the rest of the board have been able to do to really grow our presence here. For folks who don't know me, I'm Sandro Roco, founder and CEO of Sanzo. First Asian-inspired sparkling water made with real fruit plus no added sugar. I'm drinking right now one of our top-selling flavors. It's our yuzu with ginger. We'll do a whole thing, I guess, later. But ultimately, my own story, my own path. I launched Sanzo just under 4 years ago in July 2019 from my 500 square foot studio apartment in Long Island City, Queens. So proud New York-born brand. And I guess for me, the major inspiration was, 4 or 5 years ago, I was really kind of growing to understand and appreciate a lot more about my Asian American identity. I often talk about Sanzo as a manifestation of kind of like a years long journey that I've been on. I grew up in central New Jersey in an area that was fortunate to be like super diverse, and felt like, hey, there's an opportunity. And really, I guess, like a big gap in how folks, both Asian American and outside of the Asian American community, experienced Asian flavors. And so, the biggest thing for me is wanting to see, just a brand really celebrate a lot of the progress that the community had made over the past couple of decades, particularly the release of Crazy Rich Asians, and then more recently, the release of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings from Marvel Studios. And then even more recently, a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once that won 7 Academy Awards. And so just felt like, hey, our community and our and just the broader, I guess, like American mainstream needed a brand that properly celebrated the accomplishments of the Asian American community, and also its what we call a bridging of cultures. That what's happening for us, it's not just an Asian American phenomenon, it's a broader American phenomenon. And so, super excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandro. And Kenshiro, let's hear from you.
Thanks, Sandro, for going first, man. I appreciate it. Hey, everyone. My name is Kenshiro Uki. My father started a company called Sun Noodle in Hawaii 42 years ago. And so my father's from Japan. My mother's from Japan. I'm born and raised in Hawaii. And I moved out to New Jersey about 12 years ago to kind of operate our East Coast side. But Sun Noodle, predominantly food service company. We were very fortunate in Hawaii where, the community at large has really welcomed my father to start his business as an immigrant. And he was 19 at the time and really wanted to share his craft and his love for amazing fresh ramen noodles. Which my grandfather also was in the noodle business in Tochigi, Japan, which is about an hour north of Tokyo. So we make noodles there. My father, and then I'm kind of the third generation in the business of making noodles. But predominantly food service, supplying, I would say, some of your favorite local ramen shops in Hawaii, mom and pop shops. We opened in California a factory in 2004. We took our craft and we shared it with the people in Southern Cal. And then I came out here in 2011 to really try to challenge and really represent our brand out here on the East Coast. And similar to Sandro, it's, I grew up eating ramen. But for many people, I think the image and perception of what ramen was that, that brick, that deep fried brick that's delicious and cheap and everything. But the ramen that I grew up eating was fresh. It was, nurturing, it was delicious. And so I'm out here working with the community to figure out how do we get more Americans to eat and really enjoy fresh ramen that I've been able to enjoy with my sister and our family. Yes, a little bit different in terms of my background for AAPI. I'm from Hawaii, which, the population of Hawaii, 47% are AAPI. That's a lot. I think in New York City, it's about 14%. And so my kind of experience and background with AAPI has been growing up a little bit different, but really inspired by guys like Sandro here and others in the community to really take charge and share our stories. And so, Adrian, thanks again for inviting us and coordinating all this, as we build this community. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, guys. So, we treat these Meet the Founder events as an opportunity for our brand community or network to ask questions that may be top of mind. It could be everything as it relates to, how to navigate to shelf or connect with buyers, distribution techniques. So please leverage this time to raise anything that might be top of mind that we have some expert panelists here to help answer. Feel free to drop them in the chat. You could also DM me or Jenna directly. But, kind of based on what you've been saying, I guess, did you start, I'm going to ask Kenshiro this question. Did you start as a food service company and then you eventually evolved and grew your company into a product that you later distributed? Can you talk a little bit more about that, how you made that transition?
Yeah, early on for our business, my father really focused on supplying the restaurants and chefs. And 40 years ago, it was initially try to get more people in Hawaii to understand what fresh ramen was and is. And so he focused a lot on restaurants and chefs. But really, I think what made Sun Noodle very special and unique, and what makes us very special today, is that we would partner with restaurants to craft noodles that would complement their broth or their dishes. And so Sun Noodle today is known to customize and bespoke noodles for restaurants. And so for 40 years, that today is still our main business, but we've always been, call it CPG, involved in specialty Asian markets. If you live in New York City, you have H Marts, you have 99 Ranch Markets, Sunrise, Mitsuwa. Growing up, I would merchandise on those store shelves in Hawaii. A lot of the products that we made for those stores were actually, my sister and I were the taste testers. And so my parents would always bring products home, samples, and we'd taste them. And if we loved them as kids, they usually made it on the store shelves. And, some of those products are still available today. But if we fast forward, when I moved out here to New York, for the first time, I came out and we were making products from California, and we were freezing them, we're distributing them 3,000 miles east, working with a third-party distributor, and not knowing that it's so different from doing a fresh DSD program that we were so used to in Hawaii. And so when I came out here in 2010, not only were we not known, is that we had a very bad reputation in terms of the quality of the products. And so I was 24. There's a pride in me of taking care of our family business. And so I moved out here. I asked my father to let me move out here. I had been in the business for about 3 years making noodles, and just knocked on doors and worked with chefs and got some opportunities to work with restaurants. Many of you probably know Momofuku Ramen, Ivan Ramen. All these guys gave me a chance to craft the noodles for them, and they're 10 years forward, they're still our partners today. But along this journey, Adrian, working with restaurants, the whole ramen, I think, fresh ramen category, with the help of all these amazing chefs, has created this kind of, it's not that it's not unknown. People know what ramen is, and they enjoy eating ramen. They like going to ramen restaurants for dates. And so now ramen was getting really popular. And in 2015, I think a lot of you guys know Ellie Truesdell, who's still very legendary in this industry, and John Lawson of Whole Foods had called me and said, "Hey, Ken, the ramen restaurants that I love eating at, they all are buying from you. Is there any way that you think about making ramen kits for our market in the Northeast region?" And me from Hawaii and looking at, the Whole Foods opportunity and not knowing what that meant, I just jumped on it and said, yes, like I'd love to do something. I'd love to do something with all of you. And, that's when we first created these ramen kits that you see on the store shelves today. We made some iterations, obviously, some packaging design changes, some ingredients, but for the most part, that was our first opportunity in 2015. And we got, a lot of learnings from them, but that was really the start of our kind of entry into CPG here in Whole Foods.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So Sandro, you mentioned that inspiration behind Sanzo came from offerings that you saw in various Asian markets. And we were just curious, like, how did you know that your product would end up in those Asian markets and influence your branding and the product itself? Like I guess, like, how did you see an opportunity in the market and decide to launch your brand? What that
Yeah.
inspiration?
I mean, there were two things that I felt like I was seeing. So one of which was, to your point, there's, in, let's say, the Asian markets, you had, I mean, in particular, I'm like thinking about H Marts both in the city and also in New Jersey, where it's like you'd have both, the main selection would be mostly import brands that I drank a lot of growing up and enjoyed. But just for my own personal taste, felt like it would be hard to continue consuming those products, mostly because when I started comparing the nutritional labels to that of like a full calorie soda, it's just, oh gosh, like I love the heritage, I love the culture, love all of it, but man, like I couldn't get over the fact that I was having to compromise. Oftentimes like nostalgia would have to override health and nutrition in order for me to pick one of those beverages, and I felt like, gosh, like, does it have to be this way? And so, that was one of the big inspirations. Also because I felt like, hey, I didn't feel like I was going to be the only person coming to this conclusion. And so, if Asian flavors were going to continue to thrive and in a way that I thought was like representing like the cultures well, felt like, hey, there's an opportunity here to kind of jump in with a bit more of like a natural, I guess what we would call better for you formulation. And then, I guess within that same vein, I also felt like a lot of the packages, like again, mostly traded off nostalgia, mostly because again, like a lot of these packaging, like a lot of the packaging hadn't been really updated over the last 30, 40 years, which again is also what makes them super interesting. But I felt like, gosh, like, is there a way that can this conversation be a little more dynamic than just trading on nostalgia? And so that was a lot of the inspiration for the packaging and like even the rollout of Sanzo into these Asian markets. But what I'd also say is, I mean, I think the bigger inspiration, what we're even seeing now is, I'd say over 90% of Sanzo sales are actually done outside of Asian markets. It's actually done in natural food stores like Whole Foods, like the Sprouts, and then increasingly, especially this year, into conventional grocery. So, our biggest rollout, a month and a half ago, we announced that we were launching into every Vons and Safeway in California and Hawaii. And honestly, for me, that was the bigger inspiration for starting the brand. Again, like I obviously I did grow up, going to a lot of Asian markets and eating the food there. But honestly, like my parents' hometown grocery store, I grew up in central New Jersey, was ShopRite. We went to the same grocery store that everybody else did. And I think the bigger inspiration for me was seeing, hey, like the broader world that I was seeing, and I talked about, Shang-Chi and whatnot. I think the bigger inspiration for me was that world that I was seeing wasn't yet reflected at ShopRites, at Safeways, at Vons, and feeling like, hey, like, what better representation of America is there? What more common experience do all Americans have, all people have, than going to the grocery store? And so I felt like that was the bigger, I guess, like inspiration and draw for me, was seeing our flavors and cultures represented on those grocery shelves.
What challenges did you face in building your brand and how did you overcome them? Ken or Sandra, who would like to take that first?
Ken?
Yeah. Yeah, for Sun Noodle, my father is a very, very humble person. And so for the better part of the business, like we were never wanting to get our brand out there. We were always kind of behind the scenes, bespoke maker of ramen noodles. We would never, the boxes were always plain. And so we always wanted to keep kind of the chef's secret sauce behind the scenes. We were the one that was going to play behind that. And it wasn't really until when I came out here and this opportunity to really share our craft with more people. Like, what is it about fresh ramen noodles that's different from what most people grew up eating? And so there was a little bit of maybe opportunity there when a pivotal point for us is when I started working with many restaurants in New York City, and they were very proud to talk about Sun Noodle. They were very proud about where their noodles were coming from. They were all talking about them on the menu. And when I opened a factory here in Teterboro at 5,000 square feet, just to make really fresh noodles for restaurants, there was a bit of a different maybe opportunity that people spoke about. And so when these chefs talk about your products and they have this stamp of approval, this credibility, a lot more people start calling for your products. And that's when we got a lot of inquiries from restaurants all across the country, this Sun Noodle product. And up until then, our marketing budget was always to make a really good product, a really good noodle. And that was it. Like, people spoke about it. But for the first time, I felt like this is something that we could be speaking our story about what Sun Noodle is, what makes us special, right? What the heritage of what my parents have done. So on the food service side, we went really kind of involved in taking any opportunity to share our story. And whether it was Bon Appetit or the Food Network, Andrew Zimmerman came out here to visit us to share our story. Like, that then started to build this like momentum. At the same time, you're getting restaurants in different cities, not just New York City, Los Angeles, Hawaii, but like Tampa, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, Chicago, ramen shops opening, asking for Sun Noodle products. And they were busy. And so when you go and visit these ramen shops, they're popping up all over the country, but they're busy and opening multiple units. And so for us, it's like the media is starting to recognize who Sun is. There's people all over the country starting to buy Sun Noodle products. And that's when that brand opportunity for us, like, we got to really figure out how we tell our story, the messaging and whatnot there. And then this Whole Foods opportunity came. And, for me, it was getting the product on the store shelves, I thought was like a success, right? I think for most people, once you get your products on store shelves of like Whole Foods and Wegmans, and then John calls and he's like, hey, Ken, you got to get these products to move. Right? Like, it's not just going to move when it sits there. And so right away, I did a lot of in-store sampling demos, right, to get really good feedback from consumers. But the most initial reaction that I got from many people was that when they tried our products and they had that first like bite of fresh ramen noodles, that I still remember like the image of their faces. They're so like blown away in terms of like how different it was. And so those opportunities that come, Adrian, was to build a brand. There's so much pride. It's like, my father has passed on his baby to me. It's like, you just nurture it to develop it forward. And so there's always learnings, because in food service, very different from what we call in CPG on the way we do business. But we've made a lot of investments in telling our story. We actually now have, I think she's on the call right now, hired a director of marketing to actually lead our marketing effort, because it's something very new to us. And so, I think we're in such a very fortunate position where people love ramen, they love Asian food. We're in a well-positioned place to like create the category for what ramen is. There's no playbook. And so as we learn, as we are in this community, that's what I love about Naturally New York, is that I'm learning every day from people that have done it. And so, it's an ongoing process, but what's really good about what's happening today is that we're being more proactive about talking about the company, our brand, and connecting with more people who are interested in the products. And so, yeah.
If you're doing more, I'm just putting this out there. We should talk more offline, but it's like, if you're doing more demos and more stuff, like, we should definitely do some joint stuff. we're doing some things with other brands on like also like joint couponing and like
Yeah.
joint demos, and just even the way of like you might experience a Sun Noodle ramen and then pick up like almost like bundle of like your
Yeah.
stuff, ours, and it becomes like an experience, I guess. Like we should go.
And that's what I love about this is like,
Yeah.
you have amazing drinks and products, and we're all on this kind of path of really just doing a fantastic job of representing our brand and our culture. And like you, Sandro, would say, hey, why don't we just do something cool together? And we could all win-win. And think the community with the CPG, especially with the AAPI, I mean, that's what I immediately felt, getting connected to all of the people in this call. So anyway, yeah, let's talk offline.
Yeah,
Happy
we'll
to-
connect our marketing teams. Yeah, let's do it. Cool.
This is actually a great pivot into kind of diving a little bit more into your marketing strategies. Very curious how you are also approaching, social media, influencer marketing, anything you'd like to share there. Sandro, I know you've done a lot of celebrity partnerships as well. You've done some things with Pixar, Marvel, I believe as well, and a couple others. Ken, I'm not sure if you have as well, but love to hear your take on, how you kind of prioritize
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
many ways out there to market your brand.
Yeah, on our end, it's been like I think I'll say on our end, it's been an evolving and moving target, if you will.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, there's someone there. Okay. And so for us, like I think a lot of getting out of the gate, we did have, and we've had like these pretty awesome partnerships. If folks aren't aware, we've done stuff with Marvel Studios for the release of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. We did something with Pixar for Turning Red. And then several months ago, we did a partnership with Jeremy Lin for the release of his documentary. And like those were fantastic for just overall brand awareness, right? It's like, you get, you really build up the brand on social media, PR. And I think that certainly helped out quite a bit with, gaining some points of distribution, and especially in the world of beverage, it's quite competitive and quite cutthroat to get on the shelf and stay on the shelf. And so having these things to be able to talk about really helps our sales team, both at the headquarter level and also in store, gain placements so that we can continue to like introduce the brand. Because ultimately, at least in our world, beverage tends to be a relatively impulse purchase. So how can you, in that couple of seconds that the consumer is at either the cooler or in the beverage aisle, like impact that decision. So what we saw in the earliest days was, hey, having some level of initial brand awareness outside of the four walls, super impactful. So that when they're going in, they're already perhaps even thinking about the brand or have heard about it. I'll say that now where I don't want to say evolving, but I think a lot of, especially in this environment where there's less capital available, we have now also grown some level of initial distribution. So much of it is how we're influencing purchase like at point of sale. And so I think one of the evolutions that we've made, and again, I do think these things might get different if you're at like 0 to 1 phase versus 1 to 2 phase versus 2 to 3 phase. Like these can be very evolving, but I think for us, now that we've started to grow more doors, it's a bit of a fuller omni-channel marketing approach. So like, yes, we're going to continue these like always on marketing initiatives on digital, influencer and whatnot, but also really, we know a lot of this category, a lot of general retail sales are affected at point of sale. So actually getting a bit closer to the customer one-on-one. So we've been investing a bit more in demos, localized field marketing efforts. We've always had, a heavy emphasis on field sales execution, but really starting to dive in further into like those closer to point of sale marketing opportunities. I get what I think folks in this industry would call more like bread and butter, CPG. So I think, again, it can really evolve. I think it depends a lot on your category, your life cycle, and even just what you're trying to do with your brand. So definitely don't want to say this is like a one size fits all, but this is like kind of this is the evolution of the approach that we're taking.
Ken, same question.
Yeah, I think even for us, in two different sets. So in the specialty Asian markets, where I think it's a little bit more competitive because there's a lot more brands on store shelves there, and there's more options. It's like we're launching a lot of new products on that store shelf to create excitement. Our products that's been on the store shelves today in Asian has been there for 30 years. Like those are our best sellers. They've been there since we were kids. But we also supplement some of that excitement with new products, new flavors, and all that inspiration that we get for flavors is like what's trending in the restaurants, what ramen shops are telling us, hey, this style of ramen is so popular now across the board. We'll then formulate that into something that people can make at home so that they can have that experience and make it at home for the ramen kits. But very new to this specialty natural side for us because, well, we've been in Whole Foods for about 7 years in the Northeast, but really we launched globally last March. So it's only been about 14, 15 months and we're learning a lot. But, you know, our team is super gritty. They're very curious. They're very just creative. And so what we've done is a lot of just social media. The one thing is we have to figure out how do you make this perception of making ramen at home not scary for many people. I think there's this barrier that it's a hard thing to make. It's very, very like difficult, but in reality, it's 3 minutes to make. It's super easy. And you can use your fresh vegetables that you have in your pantry. And so we use a lot of just content creation. We're seeing that that's been good in terms of just like awareness, but similar to like Sandro, when people go to Whole Foods today, I'm pretty sure they're not looking for ramen noodles. So it has to be either planned out or experienced. And so we've done a lot of promotions. Now that the stores are letting us do some in-store sampling again, like we're pretty active there. We believe that, you know, when people actually try it, they'll like it. And so, you know, having them try it first has been always successful for us. But we've also done some really cool things recently, right? So last year, with our partnership with Momofuku at the restaurant level, we launched a Momofuku collaboration kit in Whole Foods. And, you know, Momofuku and Dave have so much clout and they have such a big community that doing a collaboration with them for us has been a really positive experience to then say, like, how can we do more of these partnerships? Because restaurants and chefs also want to get their products in store shelves. We're trying to build our presence there. We have a good relationship with them on food service. Let's learn together. So we did one with Momofuku last year. We did one this year with Iron Chef Morimoto, that we supply him with his restaurants throughout the country. And you know, moving forward, we're going to launch a few more, not just restaurant partners, but really cool brands that's in the AAPI community, because it just feels good, you know, to do things together on store shelves and learn from it. So those collaborations have been really, I think, for us, powerful because as people are not looking for ramen, is if they have a collaboration where they have community, is that it'll drive some people to go to the store shelves of where our products are, and they may see our other products, may pick those up, and then hopefully, our intention is to become, to have them become fans of Sun Noodle. So we've done a few things here and there, but we're learning as we go. Not everything works perfectly. What works in New York doesn't work in Hawaii, doesn't work in LA, doesn't work in Texas. And so we're just learning as we go, but we're really intentional to look at the data and see what's best.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience. What advice can you share with aspiring entrepreneurs looking to develop a product, but do not specialize in product development or are not in the food industry? Can you share your experiences on how you got your product off the ground, from formulation of final product to testing customer demand to get the conviction to scale?
I could probably take this. Since I came specifically from outside the industry. Yeah, so Sanzo is like, I literally did the first formulations in my kitchen apartment using purees that I ordered from Amazon. I bought a 12-pack of Canada Dry, I bought a $20 weighing scale that chefs use in kitchens, and Google Sheets to come up with, basically compare out, keep logs of the different formulations, rank, like taste rankings, and then kind of cross-referencing that with, I also built up like a COGS model. So you kind of see like, okay, well, we love this, but this would cost an exorbitant amount to make. So there's not really commercially viable scale there. And again, maybe in beverage, at least for a beverage like Sanzo, it's a bit of an easier one to build. Like our yuzu, for example, is 3-4 ingredients tops. And so, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I would say to anybody who's like getting into this, for the first time is, one, not rocket science. It is, kind of like basic math in a lot of these ways, and like knowing your numbers and knowing your cogs is hugely important, and knowing, where you are. Yeah, getting intel on, okay, this is maybe where I'm at for my first, 100 units, but then also getting the intel for where you might be at like 10,000, 100,000 and beyond. Like, I do think that's like an important piece of homework that entrepreneurs should do before getting in. Just because like, you can't scale something that's not scalable. And especially now in this environment, like, investors and just like yourself, you'll go to bed a lot easier knowing whether something is really scalable or not. And the other thing that I've learned, again, this is particularly in beverage, but I know it to be the case in food as well. There's a very robust industry of third-party, formulators and folks who specialize in this. Obviously there's, they'll do it for a fee, but there are a lot of resources and folks in this space across all categories that can kind of help along with that. What I often tell folks is like, it is important for you to have a point of view on what you want that formulation to be. And oftentimes I think that's best done by doing like a home batch of some kind. For us, it might be, literally, like buying seltzer water and purees on Amazon, putting it in a flip top bottle and sending that in. For someone in the food space, if you're doing snacks or other bites, it's like actually trying to do something in your home kitchen. Like, I think trying to go as far as you can on that 0 to 1 process to inform a conversation with a third party formulator, it creates the best relationship between you and that third party, and also for yourself to have that kind of knowledge. It's ultimately, that also tell folks, like, it's ultimately your business. Like, you have to be in control of the business that you are building. Even if you're going to work with third parties, they're not going to care nearly as much as you are. So you do have to take a lot of those steps on your own, I think, to have initial success.
Thank you. Okay, so Michael Ham of Wild Orchid Teas, he did mention you guys are an inspiration to fellow AAPI entrepreneurs, and I definitely agree. Other than a great product, what are key attributes that will make a brand appealing for the type of partnerships you guys are talking about? And can you share some effective ways that you've reached out to brands who have grown an audience to discuss a partnership and collab? Kind of like how you guys almost just did before.
Sandra, I feel like you've done a lot more collaborations, but maybe, I think that question is probably better answered from you. From our side, this community, again, I'll just go back to the community that we have here. It's so welcoming. I think if you have a product that you've been working on for years, or you're really proud about, just if you wanted to just reach out to a handful of people that you're inspired by, share with them your story. A lot of them have been really receptive to any kind of just, sharing of stories of collaboration. And so we've been actively, communicating with so many brands. And I'll give you a good example. Like at Expo West, this past year was our second year. Last year was our first time. And I think, Sandra, I think maybe you're a part of that group, but like all the AAPI brands and founders just came together in that one hall and really almost shut it down because there were so many people present, representing their companies and just talking. And so, a lot of the collaborations that we've done were really born out of a discussion like this. Like, we would have coffee and we'd share with I'd share with them, like, hey, here's kind of like what we want to do. Here's an opportunity. And oftentimes when you share those discussions that you have on your mind, again, this community of CPG people and the brands is like, there's probably going to be some synergy with a few companies or brand founders that would be really positive about doing something together. But that's been our experience, and we'll do a few this month because it's just amazing to see like the Japanese ramen dish collaborating with like other cultural, ingredients and then mashing those together, taking the best of each. And then the consumer gets to enjoy both. Like that's been something that we've been pretty open about and then really active about. But Sandro, you've done a lot more than I have. So
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, the question is like, other than a great product, I mean, ultimately, especially in the world of CPG, I think one of the key lessons that we've learned is like a lot of it's about the story, right? And so like, the product I'll add as being, for us, let's say, I would actually say it's twofold. So when I think of product, it's not just the liquid, especially in beverage, it's both the liquid and the packaging and the front packaging. Maybe in other categories, it can be a little bit more forgiven on one versus over the other. I think I'll just say, at least in beverage, it's quite unforgiving. The competition is just so high. So like having differentiated, I'll say, product on both the front packaging and or the liquid itself, like super, super important. And then, yeah, like again, and this may be particularly for beverage where it's a bit more of an impulse buy, but like a story and a hook, like, is actually like that's part of it too. And so, I'll say that from my own perspective, like I had to learn this through a lot of unsuccessful pitches, just like, kind of putting myself out there, talking to folks, and a lot of, and through a lot of those conversations, it was just like hammering home, like, what is your unique value proposition? Why this versus anybody else? What I started finding, I'll say what I started finding organically, which I think is a great place to start. And I'm sure like Kenshiro, especially with your food service partners, you felt this too. It's like, well, who was already naturally picking up the Sanzo product? And for us, it was actually a lot of, AAPI chefs, like especially in the world of like QSR, like, quick service restaurants that needed that wanted a drink accompaniment to their, like their $15, rice bowl or poke bowl or something like that. And that's, for us, that was where some of it started. And then we kind of just went from there. And that kind of formed the basis. Like we also, I'll say within the first 5 or 10 doors also were in one of the Momofuku shops. There's actually there's this QSR called Bong Bar up in Columbus Circle. And we're able to like leverage that to kind of build up additional, QSR presence. But so like ultimately, I guess to get back to the key question, like one, I think it's having a story. Two, and maybe this can go hand in hand, a story that's informed by something that's organic and authentic, to the brand. And that's why I think like ultimately it's like, as you're getting out there and starting off, part of it's like getting a read from your customers of like why they purchase you. Sometimes they'll be able to better tell you why they like your brand, but then it's up to you to take that message and then amplify and multiply that. So like, there's some, I think, key things you can do in the earliest stages. Like the number one thing to me is like being very close to your customer and like consistently getting feedback from them and then turning that into a story that has a little bit more, ubiquity. And then to Kenshiro's last point, like I would agree, then once you have that, then yes, it's having these kinds of conversations. It's a super collaborative community, and it's fantastic. But I do think where brands get into trouble is they try to reach for these brand partnerships without they themselves knowing what actually makes them distinct and unique. And for potential brand partners, like it's got to be a two-way street, right? You have to be able to contribute something to the conversation to then have that awesome partnership. Like the partnerships are like, or collaborations are that, like they are a two-party, or multi-party, depending on how many folks you're doing it with, like everyone pulling their weight together is what makes a partnership great.
Well, this has also inspired me to figure out an easier way for just the brand community at Naturally New York to be able to partner together and, these different types of collaborations. So I'm going to spin my wheels on that and figure out a way to make that happen. This has been really great so far. I really appreciate it. I have a couple more questions for you guys, and I'm still opening it up to the audience. Please don't be shy. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. Feel free to DM your question. I'm curious to know what's next? What are your future plans for your brand and how you're going to continue to grow? If sky's the limit. What's next?
Yeah, just I can go first. On our side, it's COVID was very, very difficult and painful for our restaurant partners. And the focus out of where we are today is to making sure that they're fully supported with products and service and everything that we can to make sure that they're good, because they put a pause on their growth plans for the past 3 years. And they've signed leases to open many more restaurants, and now they're really getting active. And so we want to make sure that we're there for them. On the CPG side, thankfully, we're a family business. We're owned by my parents, and we don't have to. And I've been really, I think, appreciative of this because as I talk to people in this community, is that we're not looking to open 1,000 stores, 100 stores every year, year after year. I think we're very measured in how we want to approach this. The many things that John has talked to me, but the one thing that I'm always reminded of is like, can you have a brand, treasure it, make sure that you do it well, make sure that you're represented well. And so we're very measured in how we want to grow this CPG category, the brand building for Sun. And so we have, call it key accounts that we're very focused on getting into. Those will happen this year. We did one Costco rotation last year, which was fantastic. We got into Whole Foods last year globally. That was fantastic. We brought in some partners to help us get there. But we have some really measured accounts that we want to be a part of. We're not trying to get into every store because we also know that ramen still is, in many people's minds, still instant. So we want to make sure that when they first get that opportunity for us, is that they're going to have a good experience with our products. We're merchandise and where we want to be, which is the perimeter. We want to be refrigerated. We want to create the category for fresh ramen noodles. And we have a big intention to do that, right? With, call it, new packaging, some new marketing initiatives, some product launches that's going to make it even more convenient for consumers in the future. But I think for us, it's like a very disciplined, measured approach to get into stores in the next 3 years. And so, yeah, we'll be focused on that.
Sandro?
We're in much the same way. I think in our path, beverage tends to need to be, I guess, slightly more aggressive in some of our growth levers. A lot of that is because there really are scale efficiencies that open up in a beverage brand, and it's quite hard to operate a sub-scale beverage brand profitably. Just say that. And so there's that, I think, balance that I'll say we've been very intentional about striking, which is growing at a certain pace that is necessary. We have taken we're a bit different from Ken's business in that we have taken in venture capital money. I think for us, it's been kind of necessary to get the growth that we have accomplished so far. And I think, again, particularly in our category in beverage, there's very few, I would actually say no examples of fast growing beverage brands that achieved growth without either a lot of venture capital or without that founding team coming from like truly generational level wealth. It's just the nature of beverage that it's a quite capital intensive business. And so we had none of that, or we had none of that in the beginning. I don't come from that kind of background. So, for us, it's been about identifying key regions where we can grow or where we're already doing well, and then, doubling and tripling down on that. So as an example, in Whole Foods, we started distributing nationally at the same exact time, Sun Noodle did, and the Northeast regions you might expect. The Northeast, Northern California, Southern California, and the Pacific Northwest have been our top regions. And so, now we've been targeting, okay, in those key regions, let's go deeper, build more conventional relationships. We are, I think, hopefully going to have a club rotation, at some point next year. And just otherwise, I continue to build the brand deeper in those regions, both from a sales and marketing perspective. So, over the next, I think it was 2 to 3 years, it's going to continue to be that level of, regional, regional focus and diving deeper.
We have a question from Lorena. At what stage did you start outsourcing social media and PR? With regards to social media, which platform has resonated most with both your audiences?
I could start out here. So we never outsourced social media. For us, your social media is very heavily tied to brand, and I think the kind of stance that I've taken is there are a lot of things that can and maybe even should be outsourced in the world of CPG and just and certain marketing tasks. I think anything that is core brand is not one of those. And so, we've always done that in-house. It was me in the very beginning, up through 2020, 2021. And, once we started growing a bit and I had to start like focusing on actually building a team, that's when we started dedicating more resources to in-house social media. PR is one on the other side that I actually do think is very valuable to have that being outsourced. We've now worked with say 3 different agencies to kind of bolster our efforts. One was a little bit more of like a freelancer, and then more recently, over the past couple of years, we've taken a more concerted effort to investing in PR as a means of growing initial brand awareness. And so say that to the last question, which social media platform has resonated most? For us, ultimately, it has still been Instagram. We have been very aggressively trying to make that not be the answer. We want it, and I think brands, frankly, need it to be TikTok or YouTube, just given those 2 platforms have a much higher viral coefficient on any particular piece of content. Instagram tends to be a bit more insular. So once if you develop a great piece of content on Instagram, it might go viral, but within only your own specific community. And then Instagram likes to charge you to be, to get to audiences that are outside of your follower base. Whereas I do think that TikTok and YouTube are a lot more democratic. If you have a great piece of content on TikTok in particular, you can overnight, get millions of views. That just can't happen on a platform like Instagram. So we want our answer to be TikTok, and that's what we're actively moving towards. But right now it has been Instagram.
This has been great. I have kind of a little bit more of a heartfelt question, but I'm curious to know, what would you almost say to your younger self? Like, what would you have done differently if you could? The advice that you would have given yourself as you were starting to really launch your business, and I'm sure we all make mistakes along the way, but I'm just curious to know what you would have changed or done differently, or advised yourself to have done differently. Might be able to, but I'm putting you on the spot. Or the greatest advice you ever received, actually. It could be a flip on that.
Yeah. I just turned 37. So if I was 10 years ago, 27, when I first moved out here, the advice I probably would have given myself starting out, moving out here by myself, was to go and network. Because this is a lot of, I think the people on the call are startup, founders, and, they're really bootstrapping everything. I haven't had that experience. My father, my parents were in that position. Sandro's in that position where they start everything from scratch. They put everything on the line. But I guess where I could kind of relate is when I came out to New Jersey, I had not known anyone from Hawaii and not knowing like community. But if these networking opportunities, this Naturally New York, is a very good example, is that what you realize is that as you network with people and they give you some advice, is that a lot of the challenges that you actually face when you're on your own is like, you think it's just you. you talk to someone that's in a similar position or similar company, like they have the same challenges. You learn from each other, and that really kind of will boost your confidence, will keep you motivated in many ways. And so, I think early on, if I could just go back, is make it a real intention, make it a real effort to go and network with people in the community that you want to be a part of, because I honestly think it's going to make you learn faster. It's going to allow you to just really be sane in terms of what you're trying to do and build. And it'll just kind of help you find ways to create solutions to the challenges that you face. And so, yeah. But, I'm a pretty shy guy. And so like reaching out for help has always been pretty difficult, but the benefits is so much greater with that. So, yeah.
Here to help. Sandra?
Mine's in another vein. I'm going to say something somewhat, I guess, like facetiously, and then get to like a bigger point that I'm very much seeing in our space. And as we grow, if there's one thing I would have done differently, it's I would have already come in with 1 million YouTube followers. I think there's a real dynamic these days about, like there's a real intersection of like commerce and media these days. And just there's now example after example after example across categories of brands that have a built-in community of some kind, really being the ones that win. And again, I say this facetiously. Yes, there's part of me that like my personality is not that, so it's almost like there's no way that would have happened. But like, I guess my proxy for it was I started with let's say like the API community first, and kind of built something that I thought would be valuable for us, that hoped could spill over more broadly. And I think that'd be my biggest thing for folks who are getting out of the gate right now. Someone told me this before, and again, so depending on folks' experience levels in this industry, you may already properly internalize this point. I didn't. I probably only did about a year ago, which is there are an insane amount of brands out there, or rather, there are an insane amount of products out there in the natural food and beverage space. There are not a ton. The difference is where are the great brands, and so, and so like in that delta, it's well, how do you create a great brand that's efficient at like scaling and whatnot? To I think the biggest experience that I've gained over the last few years is how you grow a brand as being in some way community led. And obviously for us, it's a little bit specific in like, the Asian American community and the Asian flavors and the bridging cultures part, and that's ours. But we've even seen, let's say in the supplement space, in the beauty space, I think, I think Michael, who put out his questions more in the tea space, and it's like there is like an insatiable thirst for folks on the other side of a TikTok screen to be part of like a bigger community than they currently have, either at home or in their own friend group or whatnot. And for better or worse, we as brands can give someone that kind of vehicle or that ability to be part of something bigger, a bigger community. And why I actually say the whole like I would have already had 1 million YouTube followers is I think when I in my experience, being able to have like cool, I don't know, some conversations with folks who have those kinds of follower bases, these folks get how to create content that creates like value and entertainment for their community. Like they actually get that, like it's a very cutthroat business in that world too, where it's like you kind of there's so much demand for attention. Like you have to create something that cuts through and that is interesting enough. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of brand owners can also take to heart, that like just because you put a product out there doesn't mean that it's going to sell, or doesn't mean that you have the right to a spot on a grocery shelf at a Whole Foods, in Union Square. Like you very much have to like earn that right to get on shelf and then generate pull to get that product off of it. And so, like that's probably my biggest thing for folks who are getting started earlier in their journeys. Like, you got to have a story, you got to craft it, you got to hone in on it, and then you got to build community around it. And I think the stakes for creating new age brands like have gone up pretty dramatically. And so it is table stakes to me to have a product that already has that kind of built-in community to get pull.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. I know this was a little bit of a quick turnaround, but I really appreciate you both devoting your time with us today. Any last words for all the early stage entrepreneurs on the call?
Just happy summer. If you're, especially if you're in something that's super seasonal, you know, this is going to be a good summer for a lot of folks. The consumers, despite all the reports in about like the economy, the consumer is still very strong. So there's still a lot of opportunity to create awesome brands and get it out there. People are craving new, awesome, exciting brands. So keep building.
Yeah, and I would just add, maybe, you know, just if you're on this call, just reach out to any of us on LinkedIn, because if we don't have the solution, we can probably connect someone to someone else. But it's an amazing just network of people. So yeah, don't be shy.
Thank you all again so much.